What we're going to do is cover some very general user interface tips, okay? There's a good bit of them here. I'll quickly go through them. I've put them in some priority. There's hundreds of them, but ultimately we're going to look at a few that I found very useful for my own venture as well, okay? And I'll start off with one very important one, okay? Keeping things simple and consistent, okay? There's a saying, consistency is key, okay? Why? We have discussed this several times now. There is certain expectations you've set with the user, with the customer. You need to maintain it. You can't keep on changing things again and again. They're so used to certain things that they don't want to change. Here's an example from MailChimp. It's an email service provider, okay? Their interface is so clean, simple, and consistent that people can read and just say, okay, you know what, this is step 1, this is step 2, step 3. There's not much going on. Let me show you a little sketch to kind of give you an idea what I mean by consistency. If you look at the right-hand side of the sketch, you see the top 3 buttons? They're all different colors. They're all different sizes. Versus left side, which they're all the same. This is what we talk about when we say consistency, because people are used to one size, one color. So on your site, if you're going to go ahead and build these buttons and any other element for that fact, and you can't just keep on changing size and colors of them, right? By the way, how many of you have seen Amazon? What are the colors of the buttons that they have? They have only 2 colors, by the way.
I think it's blue and yellow.
So by the way, it's not yellow.
It's gray and yellow.
It's actually more orangish than it is yellow.
It's gray and yellow.
Yes, absolutely. She's right. It is actually gray and orangish, not yellow. Actually, it's a very orangish yellow, but it's an orangish color, and then the gray is very much a whitish gray, okay? But they consistently carry those 2 colored buttons, consistently. Why? People know what are the 2 buttons for. When it's an important thing to click on, it's always the yellowish orange, okay? Similar thing. Again, every site does this. Any large site you will go to, they have done this, okay? They maintain consistent colors and simplicity, okay? Same thing. Next thing, when you talk about user interface, make sure there's visual hierarchy, okay? What that means is your website, right, or your app, there's a certain way you want a user to move through it, right? You don't want the person to go anywhere, correct? When you make something, you want a specific place they should go, then they should go to another place. It can only be done if you tell that person that there is a hierarchy. There is a visual hierarchy, right? First here, then here, then here, something like that, right? But in most cases, people forget that at times. They just put anything anywhere, and there's no hierarchy maintained, okay? Let's look at an example here, okay? This is Netflix's homepage at some point, right? Now, if you look at this, what you see right away are few highlighted recommendations, right? So what they've done is they said, listen, this is where I want you to go. They're forcing you, they're kind of coercing you to play this, right? Remember, look at the button, it says red and it says play. They've maintained a hierarchy. Before you go find any other movie on Netflix, they want you to first see this, correct? Because this is what they're pushing. So it's not about hierarchy of one after the other. It's also where do you put the focus, okay? So when you're doing a user interfaces, you have to make sure of this, okay? So again, let's look at a little sketch. If you see the right side, all the text is in one line, correct? But if you look at the left side, what they've done is where there's a title, it's bold. There is some highlighting behind it, okay? And then the next sections have a section title, then they have the text. So the hierarchy is being shown there, okay? That's what hierarchy is, okay? You need to make sure that's maintained on your user interface, okay? Otherwise, the person will not know what to do. Next tip, your fonts, right? Your typography, right? So if you look at this, you can actually use typography to create the hierarchy that you wanted. Obviously, larger fonts, certain types of fonts automatically create hierarchy for you. Right? Certain types of fonts or certain way you use those fonts can also create other effects for you. So when you talk about visual hierarchy, you can always talk about typography also. Okay? Now here's an example. You know why it's great? The colors, the font get your attention. I read somewhere that a bunch of UI designers actually depend on this font to get attention. A good percentage of them, actually. So this is a special font that gets people's attention. And sites that want attention actually use this font. Now here, if you see, to get your attention, and I know it's not a little bit clear to all of you, if you see the text in yellow highlight, right? That's what will catch your attention because it's in yellow highlight. Or on the other side, the ones that is more bold or a different font will catch your attention. Okay? So fonts, highlighting, bold, etc., typography is another way to create that hierarchy that you want. What do you want people to see first? Where do you want them to concentrate? Okay? Other, color and contrast. You know what? How do you create more attention? How do you have people look at a certain thing? It's not only about just color, but can you create a contrast? Right? Give you an example. Look at this. The background is a very darkish, blackish, brownish background. But the front ground or the front is actually very vibrant colors. That contrast gets your attention. So it's not only about color, it's about can you create the contrast. Okay? So the colors can actually be used to create that same visual hierarchy. They can be used to get attention, all that kind of stuff. Okay? Now, let's, again, a sketch, right? On the right-hand side, it's got some text. It's got, hey, at the end, you're going to do something. On the left side, simply by changing the color of that one little box where you want them to do something will get their attention. All it says is, please do this. And it's highlighted and made it a yellow color, let's say. So it's created a contrast. Okay? And this will what will get attention. So the color contrast, again, can be used to get attention from people. Okay? So it's not only about color, but the contrast that you create against your backgrounds. Okay? Like somebody, I read that a lot of designers make a mistake of having a red and blue contrast. It's actually a big no-no to have red and blue contrasting. It actually irritates people. So yes, contrast works, but there's certain types of contrasts that will not work, like blue and red. Okay, again, these are what current guys that are using. Another tip, give people less choice. Don't put too much stuff on one page or one screen. Right versus left. Left says ABC, right says A through Z. Okay, more options you give them, more reason for them to think, more reason for them to get confused, more reason for them not to buy. Okay? So give less choice. Next, and this again we've been talking about in your UIs. Make sure your designs are responsive. Okay? Otherwise, you're going to have the situation you see here. Somebody's going to open it on a mobile and it's going to look like that. Okay? We all assume that today everything is responsive. It is not. So we need to make sure that one of our biggest user interface is that you make sure that everything becomes responsive. Then another tip, set the customer's expectation. So if you have several steps to go through, make sure they understand which step they're on. Did you notice something this morning which doesn't happen usually at our classes? What did I start with? What was my first slide early in the morning that I started with in content? Exactly. Do you think that was just done normally? No. It was part of my lecture because I'm covering it. I wanted to make sure there was an example for me to go back to. I set the expectation in the morning that this is what we've covered and this is what we will be covering. Okay? When that makes you much more comfortable with what I'm trying to do, right? You know कि मैं step 1 पे हूँ या step 2 पे हूँ या step 3 पे हूँ. I can plan my time, I can plan my mindset, I can plan everything else, okay? It's very important to set the customer's expectation because if you don't, you know what happens? If I'm doing something and I click and I click and I click and I'm still getting nowhere, you know what? Irritates me. If you had told me this is step 4 of 8, I will still wait, you know? I know another 4 steps have to go. Okay? Make sure you set your customer's expectation. So in here example, you see it says you are on stage 1 of 3, or step 1 of 3. Got it? Another tip, repeat your call to action buttons or any call to action. Just because you have it like in the right-hand side on the top right doesn't mean you can't have it on the bottom again. Your job is to get people converted. Correct? That's why we're doing all of this. That's why we're all here. Ultimately, get the people on your site, get them to buy a service or a product or be engaged with me somehow. And that will only happen if they click on those call to actions. And it doesn't hurt. It actually works to have multiple call to actions.
Is there any limitations on the number of call to actions? Because I've seen several sites, where there's a lot of descriptive information given. And after every 1 or 2 paragraphs, there's a call to action. And when I read it, rather than prompting me to take action, it irritates me. Why are you asking so many times? And I go off the page.
Okay. Very good question. From my perspective, they're doing it based on the attention span. Most people don't have the attention span. So they want to give them the choice right there. But it may be wrong in all cases. Okay? It may work for some, but it may be wrong in your case. Okay? But usually, if they're a good planned UI expert or a UX UI expert, what they will be doing is they'll be measuring and to see what your attention spans are. Based on the attention span, give the call to action. Because if your attention span is long, I would put the call to action on the bottom. But if your attention spans are very short, I would have those repeated call to actions. Because I don't know when you will leave. That's the reason you see that. Okay? So in your case, you may have it. In others' cases, they might not.
So will that mean a call to action will change from a customer segment?
It definitely will. It will change
from
customer segment.
Or a product or a customer segment.
Absolutely. But the only thing you have to remember is you can't have multiple types of call to actions on a page. Okay? Max, you usually will see is 2. You will not see more than that in most cases. Because after that, you're confusing the hell out of the customer. Okay? So you need to have limited, but yes, you can repeat them on certain intervals.
One more thing was, okay, sometimes even when a customer buys it, even after buying, they again put some call to action. And as you told, something to add up. And will this it's a short strategy, or means people have bought one, so he will add something and buy something more?
So it's not all the time that strategy will work, but it's added sales, right? So most e-commerce players or even other digital players will try to do that. Will give you an upsell option. It's not a sure shot. But you know what? It doesn't hurt them to try. There is a caution to that though. When we later today talk about certain page level strategies and we talk about the shopping cart, this is a big no-no in my opinion in a shopping cart. Because at that point, the customer has already decided. Why do you want to confuse them with another thing? I'd rather do it after they've bought and say, you know what? Maybe you can also buy this. Okay? But that's my opinion. That's not to say that it doesn't work for certain people. For large, maybe multi-brand retailers, it may work, right? But maybe for a small brand, it may not work. So it all depends. All right, getting back to this. So like I said, you can have multiple call to actions, but limited number of types. So you can't say, buy it now, add to wish list, maybe save for later, go do a comparison. 5, 10 call to actions will confuse the user, okay? So you can repeat them, but not have many different types of it. Other thing, have small forms. You ask people to fill information for you, sign up for my newsletter, this and that. You know what? Keep it as small as possible. Don't try to ask them all of their life information at one time. Please tell me your children's birth date, your anniversary, your brother's this, and your wife's that. And you want their whole history. I would love, or any marketer would love, to have as much information as possible. But that's only good if they give you the information. What if they see the form, the one on the right-hand side, and just leave? You want to get only the information that you need. Rest of it you can collect over time. Okay, there's strategies of how to collect information further. But you don't do it initially. You keep your form small. Only take the information you have to have. Got it? Next. This is a habit of old designers. Have lot of borders. सब जगह lines दिखती. You see the right example? Everything has a border. But today's UI and the studies that have been done have said that you don't need those borders anymore. People are used to a free-forming or free-flowing design. They don't need the lines anymore. And it actually disturbs attention of the users. So go away from it. Okay? Again, don't try to reinvent. I gave you an example. Look at this. On the right side, somebody's trying to reinvent how forward and back work. Listen, the worst move you could ever do is to reinvent something that's been there since the beginning of web. Forward button always goes on the right side, and the back on the left side. Why would you try to make it the other way around? Somebody sits somewhere though, saying कि मेरे को ऐसे ही करना है. But for you, for most of you, you don't want to reinvent. And this is one of the most basic examples of it. Okay? Like add to cart. Why would you want to have some weird thing to it? Add to shopping bag, yes, because people are used to it. Add to bag, maybe, right? So there are many other sentences or phrases that you can use, but you wouldn't say, add to my treasure chest. Oh, I wouldn't come. I didn't even know कि वो जा कहाँ रहा है. Correct? So you don't want to reinvent things that have been tested.